this video, I'm going to talk about assessment centers. So that may sound really boring to most of you, but the assessment centers are really common in graduate recruitment or bulk recruitment. I've been through several in my time as a graduate applying for roles, and I've been in several as someone who's actually assessing candidates. It's much nicer to be the assessor than the assessee. But in this video, I'm going to give you tips for what you can actually do to make the most of what is a traditionally quite awkward experience. So an assessment center is where, usually done in bulk, where you come in, tables of 5-6 people, sit at different tables, and then there's activities or assessments designed to test usually how people work in teams or communication skills. So an example of ones I've been involved in, both as a graduate and as a recruiter and an assessor of graduates, have basically been where you get a group of people. It might be one of the first parts of an assessment process. So you get people in, invite the people that are shortlisted, and they would do certain activities so that you could assess lots of people to make a decision about who should kind of be shortlisted for the next part of the process. As an introvert, assessment centers are really hard as an applicant, because my default mechanism is to think before I speak. So sometimes in an assessment center, things are going so quickly that an extrovert can dominate the conversation and can therefore be seen as more valuable because their ideas are getting out there. My ideas are in my head, so no, I'm not getting any points for any of the processing that's happening. So as an introvert, you really do need to step up and make sure that you are articulating what's happening in your mind. But let me talk you through some tips so that you can make your assessment center experience as strong as possible and hopefully get shortlisted to the next part of the process. So first things is dress for success. I know that's a bit rich coming from me, having not washed my hair for several days. I'm on holidays. So dress for success, dress as well as you can, not only because it creates a really good impression, but because it can intimidate other people that are there. So if you're dressed in a suit and someone's dressed really casually, they're sweating it when they get there. Well, you might be sweating due to wearing a suit, but it just makes you feel quite powerful and like you belong. So I don't know whatever the appropriate code is for dress in your culture. Just dress up, dress like you would be going to a really important function, because this is an impression-based experience. You are deciding to make a really strong impression. So one of the things that's not really obvious when you're in an assessment center, and it took me a while to figure this out, was I noticed that on assessment centers, people who sat at the end of the table often found it quite hard to be involved in some of the processes. Because if you've ever been at a large group, being at the end of the table is kind of a disadvantage, because things are happening in the middle, crossways, and you're trying to get a word in and you're not getting much traction. And I saw that play out a lot in assessment centers. The people that tended to be the most dominant tended to sit in the middle of the table. So, you can imagine a table and there's people either side and at the ends. Try as much as possible, unless they have a seating plan, to sit in the middle of the table. Okay, so don't get too early, because you'll be the first one there and there'll be other people and you won't get to choose where you sit, potentially. Don't be too late, because you'll get the last, but just kind of get in the middle as much as you can. I thought about a cheeky way of potentially having a neck brace or something like that and sort of saying, do you mind if I sit in the middle of the table as I can't move my neck very far? I mean, what levels you go to get a job, but that could be a way of guaranteeing that, you do sit in the middle. Like the maths doesn't really check out, but people probably won't argue with someone that's got a neck brace. So if that works for you, go for it. So introverts, you really need to articulate your processes. And what you also want to be doing is not being seen to go with everything that someone else says. An introvert's advantage in assessment centers is often you can be a peacemaker. So what I mean by that, or an inclusion master is probably a better way of saying it. So that if people what tends to happen is dominant person has an idea. What do we think, guys? Yeah, go. Dominant person does stuff, and maybe someone else is saying a few things. Oh, I think we should do it differently. I think we should do it differently. Because often in assessment centers, there's activities where you have to build something out of straw or, out of bits of pasta and put a flag on the top for marshmallow or whatever. And often the dominant person is saying all the ideas, right? And someone else might say an idea and the dominant person just says, I actually think we should do this, and they just go on with it. As an introvert, you're probably not going to be able to step up to the dominant role. And I'm not saying introverts can't be dominant. I'm just saying it's a natural disadvantage. But what you can do with a natural advantage is to be the inclusion expert. So what you can do with the dominant person is saying, okay, you've said quite a few ideas so far. I'm just really keen to hear ideas from other people in the group so we can have a group consensus on this. So my thoughts around this process of what we should do next is this, and this. I'm really interested, what do you think over here, Johnny? Or what do you think over here, Sally? Or, whatever other name you can think of. And that way you'll definitely get bonus points for collaboration and inclusion, which is sometimes really important in an assessment center. So what we're looking for assessment center is, it's less about having the tallest structure. It's about the communication skills that you adopt within the group. So you don't want to be seen as too passive, because then people will go, oh, I think he could have said something, but I didn't see it, so I couldn't score on it, right? You don't want to be too dominant, because, particularly if it's really seen as aggressive, depending on what the job is though. And so you want to find that nice middle ground. So taking the opportunity where possible to invite ideas from other people is actually really, really valuable. So that's in session. So tips: seating plan, dress really well, sit as close to the middle as possible. Invite inclusion and ideas for other people, and also suggest your own. Another opportunity is to just Google assessment centers and activities and actively practice several activities. I know it sounds a bit weird, but recruiters like us are time poor and will often Google assessment center activities, the same search that you're doing. And so that if you get there and you've done an activity that they're actually doing, you're at an extreme advantage. There's an activity where there's one where a plane crashed and there's certain materials that you need to gather, and which material should you use first and what reason. And it's not about the actual order, but imagine if you got it right, then you're actually able to justify it to your group and sort of say, hey, you don't admit to having seen the activity because that kind of gives it away. But you might sort of say, I think we should use the mirror. I think the mirror should be one of our top items to use. I think because we could, reflect the sun, and that could be a real beacon for help. And, so you'd actually have the justification, and then you'd be able to say, well, what does everyone else think? Because you kind of know you're right. And so people are going to say, yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. Or if they say it's a wrong idea, you actually know that they're wrong. So you're inviting an opinion where you actually look more superior, because you can say, well, I take your point on that, but I actually think because of these reasons. So you actually get another opportunity to sell yourself. So all these are kind of cheeky little tips and tricks to kind of get ahead. Recruitment processes are games. They're games. This assessment center is a game. So within the game, you can play the rules as best as possible as you can. And another rule for the assessment center is have fun. Don't have so much fun you're really loose and swearing and carrying on. But as much as it is a pressure situation, try to be yourself. It will shine through, but just be a more elevated version of yourself. Now, I've sort of done the introversion spiel because that's what I am, so I can kind of relate and talk about that much more easily. But as an extrovert, if you know you are quite dominant, then that is that opportunity for you to kind of step back and say, hey, guys, I know I've sort of taken control of the activity so far. These are just my ideas. I'm really open to other ideas. What do you think? So you have an opportunity to potentially be a bit more inclusive if that's not your natural style. If your natural style is just, hey, I'm a leader, I get on with it, I do X, Y, Z, then you might need to know that, okay, I need to scale it back and really open it up to the group. Because everyone's trying to impress, but being impressed, if I can speak properly, I'm going to do great in an assessment center, is also about allowing the group to shine. Oh, getting emotional. No. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I've recorded quite a few, so if there's any, you've got a recruitment process coming up with an interview or lots of other things, please watch them. Like, subscribe, that would be really helpful. It shows me that you value these, and then I'll keep doing them. Awesome. All right, best of luck on your next recruitment process. I'm rooting for you. All right, see you later. Bye-bye now.